Well, praise the Lord, everyone. Good to see everyone in Sunday school today. I'm looking forward to a great day in the Lord. Beautiful day that the Lord has blessed us with. Don't you love this weather we're having? It's just absolutely gorgeous. And how can you not help but be happy in this kind of weather? It's just beautiful outside. Brother Nathan and I were talking earlier about just being outside in this kind of weather and how much you enjoy it. The Lord has really blessed us, folks. He's really been good to us, and each and every one of us He's been good to. And I thank Him for it this morning. Love serving the Lord. This is my favorite time of year, and just seems like it gets you closer to Him. This kind of weather just seems like it brings you a little closer. But let's all go ahead and stand this morning and go to the Lord in prayer. We've got several out today. Brother Rogers and Katie and Caden are gone to Colorado, and Brother Chad and Sister Amy's in Maine, I think. That's where they're at. And then we've got more out, and some that's going to be traveling out this afternoon. So let's remember all of those. They will be coming back this week, and we need to keep them in our prayers for safe travels. And then we have several on our prayer list to mention this morning. Also would like to make mention that we have a situation most of you realize going on in Israel at this point, and some tragedies and bombings of terrorist groups, and we're just inching closer and closer to the Lord coming back. And all this is set up. If you want to read about it, you can see it in the Bible how it's going to come to pass. And we just need to pray for the situation over there. It's pretty serious this morning. I think the last I heard it was some 600 people had been killed today or yesterday. So let's keep that situation in our prayers. Keep our leaders in our prayers. Whether we are happy with our leaders at this point or not does not take away the seriousness of the situation of the world, and who we've got is just who we've got. So let's pray that the Lord direct their paths and their hands during this situation. Let's remember Sister Cutshaw. She's in the Mississippi Care Center. Several of you have visited her, and I know she appreciates that. But let's continue to hold her up in our prayers. Also, Brother Bill Cutshaw also is having I'm sure, a tough time also. Harriet Clarity is still on our prayer list, I see. But Brother John says she is doing much better, and probably can take her off the prayer list at this point. But let's remember in our prayers. Matt King, of course, several of you know Matt, came here for several years and hadn't been here in a while, but has been visiting back and forth. But he's had some heart issues, heart attack, I think. So let's remember him. Linton Spencer, 5-month-old with RSV. Remember that request. Chad Stewart and Vicki Skinner. Remember those two names. Also, Paul Rollison. I know his situation is still serious, very serious, life-threatening, and just at the point of death, seemingly. So let's remember him and the family as they go through this trying situation. Anyone else have a prayer request? I know we need to remember Kenny Hastings. Let's remember that. Anyone else have a prayer request? Okay. Most of probably all of you know John Marsh runs the Slugburger Cafe, and you know him from the Marsh Brothers welding team also. And remember his wife in our prayers today. Anyone else? Sister Connie? Oh, wow. All right, so let's remember this situation. Don't understand these things sometimes, but the Lord's got it in His hands. We know He's got it under control. Anyone else have a request that you'd like to mention? Sister Gail. Okay, remember Katrina Carter in our prayers. Anyone else? I believe the Bible says to make your requests known, and we try to do that each Sunday morning. I know it takes a little time, but we seemingly don't have time for that in our regular services anymore, but I'd like for us to make our request known and go to the Lord in prayer with those. And we're going to go to the Lord in prayer this morning. I'm going to ask Brother, Jonathan Ryder, remember him in our prayers. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. I'm going to ask Brother Chris to lead us this morning. You may be seated. Come on, ushers, and get our Sunday school offering this morning. We have a real treat for us today. Good to see Brother Eddie and Sister Gail back. I know they were here Wednesday night, and I was out Wednesday night, but I'm glad they're back in Sunday school with us today. You got a special place when you're not here. We sure miss you, so I'm glad that they're back. Glad to be back myself. And we've got a real treat for us today. I'm looking forward to it. Brother Joey Gilmore is going to be teaching for us today, and he's always got some interesting things to tell us and does a great job teaching. And he had a very successful weekend this weekend cooking and won several awards. And he's one of the top chefs in the United States at cooking, and he's one of the best teachers. So I'm going to ask Brother Joey to come on this morning. I know you'll enjoy it. He's always got some interesting points and things that I haven't never thought of, and I'm looking forward to it today. Let's give Brother Joey Gilmore a big hand this morning.
Thank you, Brother Keith. I don't know about all them comments he was telling you, but I was outside in the elements yesterday, and a lot of smoke and dust, and I have allergies anyway, so my throat this morning, y'all have to excuse me if I have to clear my throat several times. It's kind of itching right now, but maybe we'll get through it. He was talking about the troubles overseas and stuff. I tell you, because I hadn't always been an angel, not that I am now, but if you've never been shot at, it's always serious when you're getting shot at, and I've been there a couple times, so I know what them people are going through, especially the innocent ones. It's really bad that you have to live in a country to where your life's at threat all the time. We're so blessed here in America to have the freedom that we have. We take it for granted every day. My subject this morning, my title is Choices and Changes. We all go through these. For some of them it's good, some it's bad. For some people it's easier than others. I read up to where the number one change that most people said they'd like to see is more happiness. And I guess that can hold true for all of us. I'd rather be happy any day, sad. The definition of choice is the right, the power, or change to choose. And the definition of change is to make a difference. Now, there's a lot of choices in our life that we don't really get to make. They just made for us. We make a lot of good choices and we make a lot of bad choices. And there's a lot of changes that's for the good, a lot of changes that's for the bad. Excuse me. We'll look at change first. Brother Hold'em used to always say, and some of y'all remember this, he'd say, if you change it just for the sake of change, just keep it. In other words, have a reason if you're going to change. Some people don't take the change easy. I guess I'm one of those. I like things to be in order and run smooth, but I don't like things just to be in an uproar, changing all the time where you never know what's going to happen next. There's different kind of changes that we come across in our life. We're going to get around to biblical, but like metamorphosis, transformation, we think about a caterpillar to a butterfly, or maybe a tadpole to a frog. Now, I don't know why the good Lord didn't just make both of them and they stay that way, but that's the way he did it. But, these have complete changes in their life that we see from one form completely to a different form. There's a lot of changes in material things. Say, for instance, trees. We cut the trees down, make paper out of it. We build houses out of it. The pews you're sitting on is made out of wood. We mix up a lot of things to make cakes, pies, different kind of meals. You take all these different ingredients, and the changes from all those coming together make something that's really good. We take water, we harness the power of water, to make electricity. We take water and change it to make tea and coffee, which most everybody drinks. it's really funny to me that a lot of us really can't accept the way we are. Now, I believe in being in order and being clean and neat and all that, don't get me wrong, but so many people want to change the way they look. As a child, I never did really wish I looked like somebody else. I probably should have, but I never did. But a lot of people say, well, I wished I looked like this, I wish I had that, but we as a human race, people don't want to accept the way that God made them. We're all made unique. We shouldn't be all the time looking for changes in our life to be like somebody else. We need to be ourselves, and that's one change that we can live without. We're going to go back to the very beginning in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. We see in the very first chapter, the very first verse there, that God's Spirit started to move and it started to change right off the start. He started to change things from the way He created it right off the very beginning. So change is going to be in our life. Right now, we're all changing real slowly. You can't see it, but every millisecond or every how small that you can make time, our lives are changing. We're getting one less heartbeat away from, passing away from here on earth. We change all the time. All the plants around us, they go through a change. You start from a seed, it grows, it produces fruit, it goes back to the seed. There's always changes. The world never starts changing. We see things every day, just like what he was talking about. Every day it's an unchanging world. It's just a continuously changing world, I should say. But the world changes continuously. The first miracle in the Bible was changing water to wine at the wedding. That was one of the very first changes we can read about. Let's look at choices for a second. We've all made our share of good and bad choices. Growing up, we've all made choices to where we probably got whippings for it, or at least we should have. But we've made some bad choices even as adults. There's a lot of choices we need to make that we hadn't made, or a lot of people hadn't made yet. Looking around the room, I know most everybody here, I think we've all made some pretty good choices in our lives. And the Bible's full of good and bad choices. One of the first choices that man made was when Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit. That was such a bad choice that we're all still paying for it today. That's when sin entered into the world by a bad choice they made. Of course, the Lord knew this was going to happen, but I've often wondered if that hadn't never happened, what the world would have been like. And then we read on a little further the choice to release a prisoner by Pilate. In Matthew 27 and 21, the governor asked and said unto them, whether of the twine will you that I release unto you? And they said, Barabbas. We remember a couple of weeks ago or a week or so ago when Brother Levi preached on this and did such a great job explaining it. That's just unbelievable choice that the people made at that time to choose someone like Barabbas over Jesus to release to the people. It blows my mind that someone could be that far out there, but it's that bad now today too. Noah and the ark. When the rain started falling, the people knew that they had made a bad choice by not listening and getting to the ark, but it was too late to change once the water started rising. I can only imagine when that water got waist deep, maybe shoulder deep. I believe probably all the animals in the ark got just deathly quiet because they'd never been in water float before. And I can just hear all the cries and maybe the people scratching on the side of the ark and beating on it. Please let us in, open the doors, but it was too late. They had made a choice not to listen to Noah when he was telling them what the Lord had told him, but a bad choice for them, a real bad choice. Of course, they'd never seen it rain before, so the warning to them was kind of like it is nowadays when the preachers are preaching to everybody about the end of time. We haven't seen the end of time yet either, but it's coming. No doubt Samson wished that he'd made a different choice when he laid his head down in Delilah's lap. He got his eyes pierced out, he was laughed at and made fun of, made sport of. I can just picture him as being a real big muscular guy, kind of like me, big chest and big arms. And I'm just kidding. But I could just imagine him looking, like a he-man because the way I read him in the Bible. But yet, just for the beauty of a woman laying his head down and making a bad choice and not keeping his eyes focused we see how his life ended up. Let's start talking about from the time we were born. Now, some of this stuff I went over several years ago, and some of you may remember some of this lesson, but I went back. I just thought it was fitting for the time, and I changed some of it up. But some of these examples and scriptures I did teach on several years ago. Well, we'll start out when time was born. Now, none of us in this room had a choice as to who we were born to, as to what time we were born, what country, what nationality, nothing. I mean, we were just born. We had no choice. And as babies, we know our parents started to make choices for us. You know, what food we ate, what clothes we wore, stuff they thought was cute. We probably didn't think it was cute if we had a choice back then. But, you know, they make all those choices. When you have kids, you make those choices for them. That's why it's so important to make right choices for your kids, because usually when you start out feeding them that they like that type of food for the rest of their life. If it's junk food, if it's vegetables, whatever it might be. So, you know, you have to be careful what choices you make. Most people think the age of accountability is around 12 to 13 years old, which I agree to that. That's when, you know, we're old enough to make choices of our own. That's when they say, you know, that really your sin starts to be accountable. Of course, I know all of us are older than that in here. But most of us agree that about 12 to 13 years old is probably about that age. In Luke 2:42, we're going to read, it says, "And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast." And then we skip down to Luke 2:46. "And it came to pass that after 3 days they found him," we're talking about Jesus, "in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions." This could be why the age of accountability is about 12 or 13 years old, because that's when he started his earthly ministry. The good Lord knew that was about the time that he felt like his age was old enough to preach. Now, I've heard of a few young preachers this young or maybe younger before, but it's rare that you ever hear anybody that young that preaches and teaches that has enough knowledge, but it is out there. So maybe that's where that came from. But no matter how old you are, how good you've been raised up, we're all still born into sin, and we are sinners until we make the choice to make something different. You know, if you don't make a choice, you've already made a choice. When you're born into sin, if you never change, you made a choice to be that way. So really, you did make a choice. We're going to skip to Romans 3:23. It says, "For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God." And then we skip down to 12:21. "Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good." We must change from our evil ways if we ever plan on making it to heaven. This is one choice and one change I hope everybody makes before it's too late. There comes a time we all must choose to obey God or just keep obeying the devil, just keep living like we was born, living in sin. Acts 5:29, it says, "Then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, We ought to obey God rather than men." Now, when he's talking about obeying God, there's no kids or young people in here, but he's not talking about not obeying our parents. And I think as long as your parents are living, you still should obey them, whatever age you are. But he's talking about obeying God rather than our parents. We've got to have a balanced life. You know, if there's somebody that's in authority over your life, your parents living, or, you know, the people we work for, that's our authority, our pastor, we still have people that we need to listen to, but we need to listen to God for sure first. In Luke 10, this is a little lengthy, 38-42. "Now it came to pass, as they went, they entered into a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha received him into her house, and she had a sister called Mary, which also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was come about, much serving, and came to him and said, Lord, dost thou not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Bid her therefore that she help me. And Jesus answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful. And Mary has chosen that good part, that which shall not be taken away from her. Mary chose to spend time with Jesus, listening to him. You know, when Jesus is in our presence and the Lord is in our presence, it should always take priority over listening to anybody else. I've never really had what I just heard a voice, somebody talking and telling me something. But I think probably anybody that's been in church any length of time, or maybe not in church, you've had the Lord speak to you. And the way He speaks to us, a lot of times for the world, they don't understand what we say when they say, well, the Lord spoke to me and told me something. Maybe they think it's just their conscience or something. But there's ways that the Lord talks to us that you can hear Him without really just hearing a voice. This goes way back. They probably don't even remember it. But several years ago, we was in church, and Brother Levi's wife now, she was sitting right over here, and she was crying, and this is way back before they even really started dating or anything, and the Lord just spoke to me. And I told them, I haven't told anybody else this before, but I knew she was going to marry, and I went over and talked to her. And I said, listen, the Lord said for you to quit crying and start smiling. He's got somebody right here for you. And I knew it was. And I told her and I told Sister Shear that. And I don't know if they remember that or not, but I remember the very night she was sitting on the second row right here, about 2 people over. But I saw that and I heard it just like it was somebody talking to me. And it came to pass. Not that I'm especially spirited or anything, but sometimes the Lord has told me things. He's told me before different ones having children, what the children is going to be, more times than once. But the Lord talks to us, and if we just listen to Him, He'll tell us stuff. Then it comes, we're getting back to growing up. When it come time for us to date and marry, which most of us is kind of past those ages, we got to be careful who we choose, because a lot of times you may change them, but a lot of times they may change you. And usually the strong is going to survive. If that person is stronger in the world than you are in church, you're probably going to change their way. So we have to be really careful as to who we choose. 2 Corinthians 6:12 says, be ye not unequally yoked with unbelievers, for what fellowship has righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion has light with darkness? Now, I'm not saying it never will happen that if you married somebody outside the church or started dating somebody that you could not bring them in and could live happily ever after. But it even tells us in the Bible not to be unequally yoked. It's hard. Luckily, I live in a household to where we're both Christian. We both believe in the Bible. I've heard of people having a spouse that didn't go to church. And I couldn't imagine how it would be to try to live 2 different lives, to try to satisfy them and go to church and satisfy what I needed to get on the other side. So you're really blessed if both of you are in church for sure. And then later on, as you started to raise your family, and some people have children, the choices you make not only affect you, but they affect your family as well. Your spouse, your children, your brothers, your sisters. You'll be surprised how many people around you, the choices you make and the changes you make that people see. Now, like I said before, I hadn't always been in church. But after I got into church, people that really knew me on both sides, I guess both ways of my life, I remember one night we was at the fair at Ripley. We had a race there, and I was there, and before we started, they came and said, hey, would you get on the PA and ask a prayer for us? I like to melt it. I said, oh, gosh. But people know. They can see the changes you make, and they know whenever you're doing something different. In Proverbs 22:6, it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. What examples are we setting for our families? Luckily, my mother carried all 5 of us kids to church all of our life till we got up in our teenage years, till we thought we was too big to go. But hadn't been for that instilled in my life, I might not have never came back to be in church or to be standing here today. So I'm thankful that I had a mother that trained us up in church. Romans 12:1-2. I beseech you, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service, and be not conformed to the world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Now, conformed, and being transformed, renewing our mind. Renewing our mind is coming to church, Sundays and Wednesdays. We hear all this stuff at work out there in the world. I have to be renewed. I have to be, it's kind of like a pep rally for me. I got to come to church and get renewed because You get so drugged down hearing all these people, all their problems, and all their cursing and different things that's out there in the world that's why we need to come to church. You may be a Christian, but you still need church real often. In Romans 1:28, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. Now, we know a reprobate mind is corrupt, rejected by God, excluded from salvation, and lost in sin. We don't want to get to the place to where we just don't make our choices and changes till we get turned over this reprobate mind. Of course, we're reading the Bible that, blaspheming against the Holy Ghost is one of the only things I can read about that you can't get forgiveness for. And I hope that some of those people that think they blasphemed actually didn't, to where they can get forgiveness, because it'd be a sad thing to know that you couldn't get forgiveness. There's no way you can make it to heaven. Excuse me. Job 14:14 said, if a man dies, shall he live again? All the days of my appointed time will I wait till my change comes. Now we know that there's a change coming when death comes our way that we can't do anything about. It's like the old saying says, if the tree falls in the forest, that's where it lies. If you're lost when you die, it's over with. I know there can be deathbed salvation, but I wouldn't put it off to then to try it to see. 1 Corinthians 15:51 and 52. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. We're going to be changed, but you hope it's going to be changed for the right way. And we can do the best we can, and we need to continue to do better and better, because none of us have made it yet. After death, there's no more choices. We don't want to wait till it's too late and then say, well, I should have made one more choice. I should have tried one more thing. I should have listened a little bit more, did a little bit more of this, because once death is at our door, it's over. Now we're going to read a little bit about changing from bad to good, some of the people in the Bible characters that we read about. The first one is Peter. It says in Matthew 26:74, then began him to curse and to swear, saying, I know not the man, and immediately the cock crew. This is when Peter was denying to know Jesus, we remember, cursing and swearing. I was real lucky. I did a lot of things out there in the world, but I just never did have a cursor. I don't know. I never said a dozen curse words, I guess, my whole life. I remember I couldn't imagine Brother Hold'em used to say when he got saved that the Lord took away his cursor. I just never could imagine Brother Hold'em saying a cuss word. But luckily, that's one thing I just never did grab on to or do. Let's look at Peter a little bit further in Acts 5:15. Insomuch that they brought forth the sick into the streets, and they laid him on the beds and couches, that at the least the shadow of Peter passing by them might shadow over them. Here he become a man cursing and swearing to people wanting the very shadow of his body to come across and heal them through, of course, the help of the Lord. Let's read about another one here in Mark 5:5, which we're reading about one whose very spirit they call Legion. And always night and day he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. In our days, we'd call this guy a lunatic. I don't know very many people just sits around, just cuts themselves to just see themselves bleed or scratch themselves, but he was crazy. But he becomes a quiet, disciplined person in Mark 5:15. They come to Jesus and see him that was possessed with the devil and had the legion sitting and clothed in his right mind, and they were all afraid. There's probably when I got saved, there's some people that saw such a change that was afraid of me for a while, because there's been some bad people out there, and to be scared of somebody because they changed so much, I guess they want to make sure he actually did change. In John, we talk about him in Luke 9:53 and 54. And they did not receive him because his face was as though he would go to Jerusalem. And when his disciples James and John saw this, they said, Lord, without we command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elijah did? Now, they was wanting to just zap them. They was wanting to bring down fire from above. But read on a little bit further in 1 John 4 and 7, they become the apostles of love. It says, Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. From here wanting to call down fire and brimstone to loving somebody, quite a change. And then we read the woman of Samaria in John 4 and 17. It says, The woman answered and said, I have no husband. And Jesus said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband. For thou hast 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hath is not thy husband. In that saith thou truly. But then, to me, this looks like this is the time in her life when she's almost repenting, telling Jesus what all she'd been through. Because in John 4 and 29, she changes and she goes and says, Come, see a man who told me all things that I did. Is not this the Christ? It's like she almost repenting, then went out into the world and was inviting people to come in and see, just like we should go out and invite people to come to church after we're saved. And Paul, the bloodthirsty persecutor, in Acts 9 and 1, it says, And Saul at that time, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went into the high priest. Here he is just threatening to hurt them, and do whatever it takes. He was just totally against them. But he becomes Paul, the tender-hearted brother, in Acts 21 and 13. Then Paul answered, What mean you to weep and to break my heart? For I am ready not to be bound only, but also to die at Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus. I don't know, I've never had in my heart that I want to die for somebody. I love the Lord, don't get me wrong, but I never really thought about having to give my life up, to die, to love somebody that much, to be changed that much from what he was. And then we have the cold-hearted Philippian jailer in Acts 16 and 24, who having received such a charge, thrust them into the inner prison and made their feet fast in stocks. But we see in Acts 16 and 33 his change. And he took them the same hour of the night and washed their stripes and was baptized, he and all of his straightway. He's the very one that caused these stripes to be on the body, whipping somebody, maybe hitting them with stuff enough that they actually bled, but then to go and to wipe the blood away from them, to clean them up. That's quite a change of heart from the person you hated so bad that you beat and, was willing to hurt that much. In Joshua 24 and 15, And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. We see this a lot of times on little plaques and people put it on the doors at home. Maybe if you still have the refrigerator with the magnets, or different readings. But that's always been a favorite reading for people. But as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. A good choice to make. 2 Corinthians 5 and 10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that everyone may receive the things done in his body, according that he has done, whether it be good or bad. That's when we stand before the Lord. That's the choices we made in our life, and hopefully that we've changed away from, and he's forgot those bad choices once you've been baptized and you've been saved. Proverbs 33 and 31, Envy thou not the oppressor, but choose none of the ways. For the foreign an abomination to the Lord, but his secret is with the righteous. The curse of the Lord is in the house of the wicked, but he blessed the habitations of the just. I want to be on the blessed side. I want Jesus' blessings on my life and my family. Deuteronomy 30 and 15, it says, See, I have set before thee this day life and good, and death and evil. In 16 it says, In that command thee this day to love the Lord thy God, to walk in his way and keep his commandments and his judgments, that thou mayest live and multiply, and the Lord thy God shall bless thee in the land whither thou goest to possess it. But if thine heart turn away, so that thou wilt not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other gods and serve them, I denounce unto you this day that ye shall surely perish, and that ye shall not prolong the days upon the land, whether you passeth over the Jordan to go to possess it. I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursings. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. Choose life. Choose the right way, choose the right things. In Psalms 1 and 5, therefore the ungodly shall not stand in judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. We can't comprehend, I don't think, I know I can't, how good heaven's going to be and how bad hell is going to be. We hear a lot of times, used to, even before my time, I hear a lot with the preachers, they say used to really preach on how hot hell was. I know Brother Fraser used to talk about it a lot. But they don't preach that much anymore. Now, so many churches have changed, and everything is all bubbly and good. You just come be a part of us, shake my hand, and everything is good. Then they go right back out and do whatever they're doing, looking just like they looked. If you don't see a change, there's probably not a change. People, when you change, people know it. It may take a little while them being around you. Even your personality changes. I know as we get older, our taste buds changes. We have changes that we can't help. It just happens in life. But the choice and changes we make for long term need to be the right changes. Several years ago, after I've been in church just a little while, the Lord gave me some words. It was back in February of 2004. And I wrote the words down and made a song out of it. And Heaven's Journey has sung it a few times here at church. It's been a little while, and even sung it out in a couple of singings. But I wanted to read the words to this song to you. When I wrote this, those of you that remember my sister, Brother Eddie and Sister Connie, they remember my sister and several ones in here. But she was a real loving, kind person. She got excited about everything. When she read it, of course, she just really thought it was the best thing in the world. So when she passed away, they sung it at her funeral. It wasn't really a funeral song, but I just thought it was fitting that she loved it so much, so I got them to sing it for her funeral. And I want to read the words to you. Of course, the name of the song was Changes. It says, I'm going through the changes while the blood is being applied. Not knowing all the answers, I've turned to Jesus as my guide. Holding on to his word, every verse and every line, I'm going through the changes while his blood is being applied. Now the fire could not consume it, the water could not wash it away. Not a stain, but a cleansing. By his precious blood, my sins were washed away. When it came to my salvation, I couldn't have made it on my own. I'm so glad I found King Jesus. Now I can make heaven my home. Of course, I like to say I'm not a writer or a poet or anything else, but those words just kind of started coming over. And how real it is in our life that when you go through these changes, when you decide to live for the Lord, overnight, especially women more than men, you don't see, it seems like, the changes as much physical on the outside as you can men. But in time, you start to see these changes, and people start to realize that you've made a different choice in life, the way that you start to act in the places you go. Now, don't get me wrong. I know I could go to a bar and I wouldn't take a drink. I never smoked before, but I can be around cigarettes, and trust me, I don't want to smoke a cigarette, but I can be around those things, and I know that I can say no to it. But if I just constantly stayed there, eventually it might start to be tempting to me to where I might want a little bit of it or try it one time, or I might be real thirsty. There's no water around. Well, rather than just starve to death, I'm just going to take a swig of this, and first thing you know, you're right back where you started from. I've been around it. I know what it's like, and I know how much changes it takes to come in your life to quit these things. Sometime maybe I'll give my personal testimony. A lot of you know it. A lot of you heard it. I know I did it one time in y'all's class, but I haven't always been where I'm at today, and I've got a long way to go, but I've came a long way. I DJ'd for several years in clubs, and I know what it's like to drink. I was a DJ for almost 8 years. Never missed a Friday and Saturday night. I played a lot of nights when I was so sick I couldn't stand up, and they didn't even know it. But there was nobody to take my place, and I'm just the type of person, when I commit, I commit. And I wasn't going to leave my boss then in a bind, so I went. But I worked at some bars here in town, and in those years, luckily, a lot of the other things out there, the drugs never attracted me. And I'm so thankful for that, because I know it's a lot harder to get off drugs than it was drinking. But, I've been down that road. I drove buses for a while to where I went out there with entertainers, and I saw their lifestyles. I saw the drugs. I seen things that happened that I wasn't aware of, didn't even know what some of it was. It's out there and it's real. But that didn't influence me to change back, because that was after I become a Christian. It's really amazing when you get around some of these people that you think are so happy that they're miserable. I can remember several nights, because you always left after the show and drove to the next show in case you had bus trouble or something. We'd leave 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and then drive to the next vineyard. But several nights after they'd wind down, there's usually at least 1 or 2 of them that would sit up there in a jump seat and talk to you. They always want to talk to somebody for some reason. But they would start telling you their troubles, and then they would start asking you questions about your life. And you can just tell they're miserable. Just day to day doing the same thing over and over, just trying to find something, and they're searching in the wrong places. But I hope that all those people, maybe some, it was real funny. One tour, they even called me Opie, I guess because off Mayberry, because I was so country and laid back, but that didn't bother me. But maybe I influenced some of them that they can make a change too, that some of them will go back and reevaluate their life, and hopefully they made the right choices before it's too late. But that's kind of all I had this morning. I just hope that I influenced somebody a little bit and encouraged you. It's odd to me that nowadays, when you look in the church world, there's a lot of changes coming in the church world that I don't like. You don't see nightclubs starting to turn the lights on and starting to change their ways, but you do see churches starting to put the lights in there and turn the lights down and putting all the strobes and stuff. They call it club church. It ain't there. It ain't real. But, the clubs ain't changing. The world's not changing. I hate to say it, but there's a lot of churches that's changing. We better be careful. The people over those churches, I pray the Lord gets a hold of their hearts and they change back before it's too late. But I'm going to turn it back over to Keith. Thank you all for listening. Just consider choices and changing your life, and I hope that I said something that encouraged somebody this morning.